I stood in the upscale bridal boutique, watching my sister Sarah twirl in a $12,000 wedding gown when my phone buzzed. Another bank alert. The $15,000 transfer to the lakeside venue had gone through. My account balance plummeted to dangerous territory, but Mom had promised this was the last major expense. Sarah would appreciate it, she insisted. I forced a smile as I put my phone away. Despite the financial strain, I felt good helping create her perfect day. Then I caught the smug look on Sarah's face as Mom whispered something in her ear. They both laughed while glancing in my direction, and suddenly I felt a chill. Something was very wrong. Sarah and I were only 2 years apart, and we used to be inseparable. As kids, we shared everything from clothes to secrets, building forts in our tiny apartment living room, while Mom worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse. I was the responsible one, always looking out for my little sister, helping with homework and making sure she had everything she needed. Even when money was tight, which was most of the time we had each other. I truly believed nothing would ever change that. After college, I worked 80-hour weeks to build my career as a financial consultant. The irony isn't lost on me now. I lived frugally, invested wisely, and slowly built a comfortable life for myself. Sarah took a different path, dropping out of community college to pursue a series of retail jobs while focusing on her social media presence. Mom never pushed her the way she pushed me. Sarah's just finding herself, she'd say, while expecting me to excel in everything. Everything changed last year when Sarah met Jackson at a charity event she was working as a hostess. Jackson Taylor came from old money with family ties to banking and real estate development. He was handsome, charming, and clearly wealthy. Their whirlwind romance shocked everyone, especially me. Sarah had never dated anyone seriously before, and suddenly she was showing off a 3-carat diamond ring after only 4 months. The day after the engagement announcement, Mom called me for an emergency lunch. I arrived at her modest house, the same one we grew up in, to find her buzzing with excitement. "Selena, this is huge for our family," she gushed, pouring me a glass of cheap champagne at 11 in the morning. "The Taylors are practically royalty in this city. Do you know they have a wing named after them at the art museum?" "That's great, Mom." "Sarah seems happy," I said, genuinely meaning it despite my reservations about the speed of their relationship. "There's just one small issue," Mom said, her voice dropping to that tone I recognized from childhood. The one that preceded asking for something significant. "The wedding needs to be appropriate." Appropriate. "The Taylors will expect a certain standard. Jackson's mother has already mentioned their country club as a possible venue." Mom fidgeted with her napkin. "But you know our situation. I've put away some savings, but it's not nearly enough." I immediately understood where this was heading. "How much are you thinking?" "Just for the initial deposits. Maybe $5,000. She reached for my hand. "Sarah's so excited, Selena. This is her once-in-a-lifetime chance at happiness." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I should have seen the red flags. But this was family, and I'd always been the responsible one. "Okay, Mom. I can help with the deposits. But just the deposits." Her eyes welled with tears. "You've always been my rock, Selena. Sarah's lucky to have you as a sister." 2 weeks later, I received a folder of initial expenses that needed payment. Venue deposit, photographer, retainer, florist, advance, wedding planner, down payment. The total wasn't $5,000. It was $25,000. I confronted Mom, immediately calling her from my office with the folder spread across my desk. "These aren't just deposits, Mom. This is almost the entire wedding budget." "Oh, honey, I know it seems like a lot," she said soothingly. "But these vendors book up quickly for summer weddings. We had to secure them all at once. We never discussed this amount. I can't just write a check for $25,000 without planning for it." Her voice hardened slightly. "I thought you were doing well at your job. You always talk about your investments and your emergency fund." "That's not the point. This is your sister's future, Selena. The Taylors are expecting a beautiful wedding. Do you want Sarah to be embarrassed for them to think we're not good enough?" It was a manipulation tactic she'd used my entire life. Family obligation. Making me feel selfish for having boundaries. And despite recognizing it, I still couldn't say no. "Fine. But this is it, Mom. I'm not an endless source of wedding funds." "Of course not, sweetie. You're the best big sister anyone could ask for." I transferred the money that evening, telling myself it was a gift, not a loan. That I was doing this for Sarah, not for Mom's approval or the Taylor's impression. I didn't know then that I had just made the first payment on what would become a $60,000 nightmare. 6 months before the wedding, my contributions had gone from alarming to absurd. Every week brought new unexpected expenses and budget adjustments. The venue needed an additional $5,000 for the specific date they wanted. The florist required another $3,000 for imported flowers Sarah had fallen in love with. The wedding planner suggested a premium band that cost $7,000 more than the original DJ. Each time the request came with elaborate justifications and promises that this would be the last major expense. And each time I reluctantly transferred the money, watching my carefully built savings dwindle. I had to postpone the kitchen renovation I'd been planning for years. My retirement contributions were reduced to the bare minimum for employer matching. What bothered me most wasn't the money itself, though that was painful enough. It was how quickly I became excluded from the planning process. Despite funding nearly everything, my opinions weren't solicited, and my occasional suggestions were swiftly dismissed. The navy blue tablecloths would complement the bridesmaids' dresses I mentioned during one of the rare planning meetings I was invited to. "Oh," Sarah laughed, exchanging glances with Mom. "We're going with blush pink, obviously. It's more romantic." Jackson's mother found the perfect wedding planner, Mom would say, despite the fact that I was paying the planner's fees. Or, "Sarah and I decided on the catering menu yesterday, even though my name was on the catering contract." I finally met Jackson at the engagement dinner held at an exclusive restaurant downtown. He was tall and conventionally handsome, with the confident demeanor of someone who'd never worried about money a day in his life. He was polite enough, thanking me for helping out with the wedding before quickly moving on to chat with his college friends. The dinner revealed that Jackson's parents, Theodore and Margaret Taylor, were indeed wealthy, living in a historic mansion and belonging to all the right clubs. But I was surprised to learn they were only contributing to the rehearsal dinner, as was traditional, according to Margaret. "The bride's family handles the wedding itself," she explained with a practiced smile when I asked about the division of expenses. "Though Jackson tells me you've been extraordinarily generous in helping your mother." Before I could respond, Mom swooped in to steer Margaret toward the dessert table, shooting me a warning look over her shoulder. Later that evening, I stepped onto the restaurant's terrace for some air, and overheard Jackson talking with a friend near the railing. "Honestly, it's the perfect setup," he was saying, his voice slightly slurred from champagne. "Sarah's gorgeous. My parents approve, and we're getting a free wedding because the sister is loaded and guilt-tripped easily. Mom's thrilled we're not touching the trust fund for this." I froze, hardly believing what I was hearing. His friend laughed uncomfortably. "Dude, that's cold. Isn't her sister right inside?" "Selena, she's fine with it. Total pushover. Sarah says she's been playing the supportive big sister role their whole lives." He took another drink. "Besides, it makes sense. She's not married, no kids. What else is she going to spend it on?" I slipped back inside before they could see me, my chest tight with anger and hurt. Later that night, I confronted Sarah at her apartment. "Did you tell Jackson I was happy to pay for your entire wedding? That I'm some kind of pushover you can manipulate?" Sarah's eyes widened in momentary panic before her expression shifted to indignation. "Were you spying on my fiancé? That's really pathetic, Selena." "I wasn't spying. I overheard him bragging about getting a free wedding at my expense. He was probably joking. You know how guys are?" She crossed her arms defensively. "And anyway, you offered to help. Nobody forced you." "Help, yes. Not fund the entire thing while being treated like an ATM machine." Her eyes filled with tears, a move I recognized from our mother's playbook. "I knew you'd throw this in my face eventually. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and you're ruining it because you're jealous." "Jealous, Sarah. I'm $30,000 deep in your wedding already. And I'm grateful. I'll pay you back from the wedding gifts, I promise." She grabbed my hands. "Please don't do this, Selena. Jackson is the best thing that's ever happened to me. His family already thinks ours is weird because Dad left. If we have to scale back now, they'll know something's wrong." Despite everything, I still couldn't bear to see my little sister cry. "Fine. But no more surprise expenses, and I want to be included in the planning, since I'm paying for it." "Of course, absolutely." Sarah hugged me tightly. "You're the best sister ever. You won't regret this." But as I drove home that night, I already did. 3 months before the wedding, my financial situation had gone from concerning to critical. I'd canceled my planned hiking trip to Yosemite, postponed fixing my car's air conditioning despite the approaching summer heat, and started bringing lunch to work every day instead of occasional office outings with colleagues. My emergency fund was depleted, and I'd even considered taking a loan against my 401k, something I'd advised countless clients never to do. The wedding planning had intensified to a fever pitch. Sarah had quit her retail job to focus on the wedding full-time, which meant daily texts and calls about new expenses. The photographer wants an extra $1,000 for a second shooter. The cake baker needs another $500 for the gold leaf detail. The custom napkins will be $2 more per guest than budgeted. Each request came with the same implicit threat: if I refused, I'd be ruining Sarah's special day and embarrassing the family in front of the Taylors. My best friend Amanda was the only one who knew the full extent of the situation. We'd been friends since college, and she'd never been shy about sharing her opinions. "This is absolutely insane," she said as we sat on my patio one evening. I'd just shown her the latest spreadsheet of wedding expenses, now totaling over $45,000. "They're taking advantage of you, Selena. You know that, right?" "It's complicated," I sighed, swirling the cheap wine in my glass. "It's family. Family doesn't treat each other like this. Have they even once said thank you? Has your name been mentioned to any of these fancy new in-laws as the person making this whole spectacle possible?" I thought about it. Actually, I think Mom's been taking credit for a lot of it. At the engagement dinner, Margaret Taylor mentioned how generous Mom was being. Amanda's eyebrows shot up. "And you didn't correct her?" Mom changed the subject before I could. "Because she's embarrassed that she's not contributing. She wants the status of throwing this lavish wedding without actually paying for it." Amanda leaned forward. "Selena, you need to stop this now before it gets worse. It's too late. Everything's booked and paid for. Sarah would never forgive me if I backed out now. And you'll never forgive yourself if you keep letting them walk all over you." I knew Amanda was right, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront the situation head-on. Instead, I decided I would fulfill my existing commitments, but refuse any new expenses. It seemed like a reasonable compromise. The following weekend, I attended Sarah's wedding shower at an upscale hotel. Despite funding the entire event from the champagne brunch to the custom party favors, I wasn't acknowledged in Sarah's emotional thank you speech. She thanked Mom for making everything possible, their future in-laws for welcoming her with open arms, and her bridesmaids for all their support. I received a brief nod as my supportive sister. After the shower, I realized I'd left my jacket in the hotel suite where Sarah and her bridesmaids had gotten ready. When I returned to retrieve it, the room was empty except for Sarah's wedding planning binder left open on the coffee table. I shouldn't have looked, but something compelled me to flip through its pages. There, in neat spreadsheet format, was a detailed accounting of every wedding expense, with my name next to almost every line item. At the bottom of the page in Sarah's handwriting was the total: Selena's contribution, $58,700, will probably hit $60 Kelvins before we're done. My hands shook as I turned to the next page, which contained notes from a conversation between Sarah and Mom. "Keep Selena managed so she doesn't get cold feet about the money. Remind her how important family loyalty is. Don't let her talk to the Taylors alone." I took photos of everything with my phone, feeling sick. On the way home, I called Mom, barely able to keep my voice steady. "I saw Sarah's wedding binder," I said without preamble. "The notes about managing me, so I keep paying." There was a brief silence before Mom sighed. "You shouldn't have been snooping through Sarah's private things." That's your response. Not an explanation or an apology. Honey, weddings are stressful for everyone. Sometimes we say things we don't mean. $58,700, Mom. That's how much I've paid so far. Were you ever going to tell me the total? "We've all been making sacrifices for this wedding," she said, her voice taking on the martyred tone I knew well. "I've been coordinating vendors and managing Sarah's stress for months. You're blessed to be in a position to help financially." "I'm not blessed, Mom. I worked for every dollar I have, and I deserve respect for my contribution, not to be manipulated and kept in the dark." "Nobody's manipulating you. You should be grateful to be included at all." Her words landed like a slap. Most successful people are happy to help their families. Unless you've suddenly become too good for us now that you have money. I ended the call before saying something I'd regret, but the damage was done. For the first time, I saw clearly how Mom and Sarah viewed me, not as family to be loved and respected, but as a resource to be exploited. It was a brutal revelation, and one that would only become more painful in the days ahead. 2 weeks before the wedding, I arrived at the final dress fitting. wearing what I planned to wear to the ceremony, a knee-length sapphire blue dress with a modest neckline and cap sleeves. I'd spent $400 on it splurging, despite my depleted accounts because I wanted to look nice for the photos. The boutique was upscale with private fitting rooms and complimentary champagne for the wedding party. Sarah was standing on a pedestal in her $20,000 gown. Yes, the budget had somehow doubled from the original $12,000, surrounded by Mom, the wedding planner, and Margaret Taylor, who had been included in all major wedding decisions despite her minimal financial contribution. "Selena, you're finally here," Mom said, barely glancing at me. "Sarah, honey, turn around so your sister can see the back detail." Sarah spun slowly, the delicate crystal beadwork catching the light. Despite everything, I had to admit, she looked stunning. "It's beautiful, Sarah. You look amazing." She smiled briefly before her gaze dropped to my outfit. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Is that what you're wearing to the wedding?" "Yes, do you like it?" I smoothed the fabric, suddenly self-conscious. Sarah exchanged a look with Mom. "It's very bright." "I think it complements the bridesmaids' dresses nicely," I said, referring to the powder blue gowns I'd also paid for. Mom set down her champagne flute. "Sweetie, don't you think it's a bit? Oh, much. The neckline is rather low." I looked down at my completely modest dress in confusion. "What are you talking about? It's perfectly appropriate." Sarah sighed dramatically. "This is exactly what I was worried about. Mom, can you please explain to her?" Explain what I was genuinely confused. "Honey," Mom began in that condescending tone that made me feel like a child were trying to create an elegant atmosphere. "The Taylor's friends will be there, people with taste and class." Margaret Taylor looked uncomfortable, studying her manicure intently. "Are you saying my dress isn't classy?" I asked, anger beginning to rise. Sarah cut in. "It's trashy, Selena. There, I said it. It looks like something you'd wear to a club, not a formal wedding at the lake terrace." "Trashy. This is a $400 dress from Nordstrom." "Money doesn't buy taste," Mom murmured, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some people just don't understand appropriate attire." I stood there humiliated as the bridal consultant and wedding planner pretended to be busy with the gown's train. Margaret Taylor excused herself to take a call, clearly wanting no part of this family drama. As she stepped away, I overheard Mom whispering to the wedding planner, "Selena has money but no class. We'll need to seat her in the back away from Jackson's family friends." My cheeks burned with anger and embarrassment. "I can hear you, Mom." Before she could respond, Sarah stepped down from the pedestal and approached me, lowering her voice. "Look, I've been meaning to talk to you about this. With the final numbers coming in, we've had to make some adjustments to the wedding party." "What kind of adjustments?" "Well, Jackson's cousin is coming back from Europe earlier than expected, so his girlfriend needs to be a bridesmaid. For symmetry, we need to remove someone from my side." I stared at her, not comprehending at first. Then realization dawned. "You're cutting me from the bridal party. Your own sister." "It's nothing personal, it's just. Jackson's family is very image conscious, and this way you won't have to worry about walking down the aisle or standing in front of everyone." She patted my arm condescendingly. "You can still attend, of course, just maybe in something less attention-seeking." I looked from Sarah to Mom, waiting for one of them to laugh and say it was all a joke, but their expressions remained serious, expectant, even as if I should thank them for this insulting proposition. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "I've paid for almost $60,000 of this wedding. I've depleted my savings, canceled my vacation, and put my home renovation on hold. And now you're telling me I'm not good enough to be in the bridal party, that I'm too trashy to stand next to you." Sarah rolled her eyes. "God, you're being so dramatic. This isn't about the money, it's about creating the perfect day." "Perfect for whom, certainly not for family." Mom stepped in, her voice honeyed but her eyes cold. "Selena, you're making a scene. This isn't the place to discuss financial matters." "When is the place, Mom? Because every time I bring up how much this wedding is costing me, you change the subject or make me feel guilty for mentioning it." "If you're going to be petty about your contribution, perhaps it's best if you do skip the ceremony," Sarah snapped. "I don't need your negative energy ruining my special day." "My contribution, I'm funding the entire thing." Mom grabbed my arm, her nails digging in slightly. "Lower your voice. The Taylors don't need to hear about our private arrangements." I pulled away from her grasp. I'm sure the Taylors would be very interested to know exactly who's paying for their son's wedding. You wouldn't dare, Sarah hissed. You'd humiliate me just to make a point. Me humiliate you? That's rich coming from someone who just called her own sister Trashy in front of her future mother-in-law. Mom stepped between us. Enough. Selena, maybe you should go cool off. Sarah and I still have details to finalize. Fine. I'm leaving. As I gathered my purse, I heard Mom say softly to Sarah, "Don't worry, honey. I'll talk to her about making that final payment for the honeymoon. Consider it her penance for making a scene today." I walked out without another word, tears of anger and humiliation blurring my vision. I drove straight to Amanda's house, barely able to see through my tears. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. What happened? Through broken sobs, I told her everything. The dress criticism, being called trashy, getting kicked out of the bridal party, and the final insult of Mom expecting me to pay for the honeymoon as penance. Amanda listened without interrupting, then pulled out a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Okay, let's review the facts," she said after I'd calmed down somewhat. "You've spent nearly $60,000 on this wedding. You've sacrificed your own financial goals. You've been patient and generous beyond reason. And their response is to insult you, exclude you, and demand more money." Put like that, the situation sounded even more absurd than it felt. I've been such a fool. "No," Amanda said firmly. "You've been a loving sister and daughter. They're the ones who've been taking advantage of that love. There's only one question now. What are you going to do about it?" I looked at her, suddenly feeling a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. "I don't know yet, but I'm done being their ATM." Amanda smiled. "Now that's the Selena I know. The one who doesn't take crap from anyone, least of all people who are supposed to love her." For the first time since this wedding nightmare began, I felt a sense of control returning. I was done being manipulated, done being the family doormat. It was time to stand up for myself, whatever the consequences. The next morning I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and began methodically reviewing every wedding expense I'd paid for over the past 9 months. I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting each transaction, complete with dates, amounts, and which account the money had come from. The final tally made me physically ill, $59,423. Nearly $60,000 I would never see again. Or would I? A thought occurred to me as I reviewed the contracts I'd signed for various services. In almost every case, my name was on the paperwork, not Sarah's or Mom's. Because I was the one making the payments, the vendors had naturally put the contracts in my name. Legally speaking, I was the client, not the bride. I called Amanda, who happened to work as a paralegal at a law firm specializing in contract disputes. "If all the contracts are in my name, what does that actually mean?" I asked her. "It means you're the controlling party," she said without hesitation. "You have the legal right to modify or cancel those services depending on the terms of each contract. Even though they're for Sarah's wedding. The vendors don't care whose wedding it is. They care who's paying them and whose signature is on the dotted line. Legally, you're their client, not Sarah." This revelation was both shocking and empowering. For the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless in this situation. I had options. "I need to talk to a lawyer," I decided. "Can you get me in to see someone at your firm today?" Amanda made a few calls and arranged for me to meet with Patricia Warren, a senior partner with experience in contract law. 3 hours later, I was sitting in an elegant office explaining my bizarre situation to a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Patricia said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "You've paid for nearly all expenses related to your sister's wedding. The contracts for the venue, catering, flowers, photography, and so on are all in your name. And now, 2 weeks before the event, your sister and mother have essentially told you that you're not welcome in the wedding party because you're not sufficiently elegant." That's the gist of it, I confirmed, embarrassed to admit how badly I'd been treated. "And they expect you to make one final payment for their honeymoon despite this treatment." "Yes." Patricia removed her reading glasses and looked at me directly. "Miss Williams, legally speaking, you have every right to cancel these contracts subject to their individual cancellation policies. Many will have substantial penalties this close to the event date, but some portion of your funds would likely be returnable." And morally speaking, I asked, genuinely wanting her perspective. She considered this for a moment. "I can't advise you on moral matters. but I will say that family relationships should be built on mutual respect and appreciation. It doesn't appear that your mother and sister are demonstrating either toward you. I nodded slowly. What would happen if I did cancel everything? The wedding wouldn't take place as planned. Your sister and mother would have very little time to make alternative arrangements. They could theoretically sue you for breach of promise, but given that there's no written agreement between you regarding these funds, and given their documented behavior toward you, I don't believe such a suit would be successful. I thanked Patricia for her time and left with a clearer understanding of my position, but I wasn't ready to make a decision yet. There was still more information I needed. That evening, I went to Mom's house under the pretense of apologizing for the dress-fitting incident. She was surprised to see me, but let me in. "I'm glad you've come to your senses," she said as she led me to the kitchen. "Sarah was very upset by your behavior yesterday. I know, and I'm sorry I lied, hating myself a little for continuing the charade. I've been stressed about money, but that's no excuse. Of course I want what's best for Sarah's big day." Mom's expression softened slightly. "Well, we all say things we don't mean sometimes. Sarah will be pleased to hear you're back on board." "I was actually hoping to help with some of the final details," I said. "Could I see the wedding planning binder again? I want to make sure I haven't missed anything important." "Of course, it's in my office. Help yourself to some coffee, I'll go get it." As soon as she left the room, I quickly searched her email on the kitchen tablet she always left unlocked. I found what I was looking for almost immediately, a conversation thread between her and Sarah about the wedding finances. I took photos with my phone hands trembling as I read their words. "Selena's being difficult about the money again," Mom had written 3 weeks ago, but I reminded her about family obligations and she caved as usual. "Good," Sarah had replied. "We need her to cover the honeymoon too. Jackson's already told his friends about our 2 weeks in Bali. Don't worry, she'll pay. She always does. Just don't tell her the total yet. It's better if she doesn't realize how much she's spending until it's all done." There was more messages stretching back months, all with the same theme, manipulating me, lying to me, discussing me as if I were nothing more than a funding source for Sarah's fantasy wedding. And worse, they'd been lying to Jackson's family too, claiming that I had insisted on paying for everything as a special gift to my beloved sister. I heard Mom's footsteps returning and quickly closed the email app. My heart was pounding, but I managed to compose my face into a neutral expression as she handed me the binder. "Here you go. All the final details are updated. We just need to confirm the honeymoon arrangements. I was thinking you could transfer the funds tomorrow." "Of course, Mom," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded despite the rage and hurt boiling inside me. "I'll take care of everything." I spent that night at Amanda's again, unable to face going home to my empty house with the weight of what I'd discovered. I showed her the email screenshots and explained what the lawyer had told me. "They've been planning this all along," I said, my voice hollow, using me for my money while laughing behind my back. "And they've been lying to Jackson's family too, making it seem like I wanted to pay for everything." Amanda put her arm around me. "I'm so sorry, Selena. What are you going to do?" I stared at the wall for a long moment, processing the depth of betrayal I'd experienced. Not just financial exploitation, but emotional manipulation, on a scale that was hard to comprehend from my own family. Suddenly, everything became crystal clear. "I'm going to stand up for myself," I said finally, "and it's going to be epic." On Monday morning, 7 days before the wedding, I made a series of phone calls to every vendor involved with Sarah's wedding. As the legal client on all contracts, I requested detailed cancellation information but didn't pull the trigger yet. I wanted to be absolutely certain before taking such a drastic step. That evening, I invited Mom and Sarah to dinner at Castello's, an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. I told them I wanted to apologize properly for my behavior at the dress fitting and discuss the honeymoon payment. They accepted readily, probably relieved that their cash cow was back in the barn. I arrived early and asked for a private table in the back, setting up a small recording device in my purse. Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recordings, something I'd confirmed with Patricia, and I wanted documentation of whatever happened next. Mom and Sarah arrived together, both looking pleased with themselves. Sarah was wearing a new designer dress I'd never seen before, and Mom had clearly just had her hair done. More expenses on their end while I was footing all the wedding bills. "You look nice," I said as they sat down. "New dress, Sarah." "Just a little something for the rehearsal dinner." The seamstress delivered it early. She smoothed the fabric proudly. Jackson's mom is planning such an elegant evening. I couldn't show up in just anything. I smiled tightly. Of course not. We ordered drinks and appetizers, making small talk about wedding details. I let them chatter, nodding at appropriate moments while steeling myself for what was coming. After our entrees arrived, I took a deep breath and placed a folder on the table between us. "What's this?" Mom asked. Fork paused halfway to her mouth. "A complete accounting of every penny I've contributed to Sarah's wedding. $59,423. So far." Sarah set down her wine glass. "Why are you bringing this up now? I thought we moved past this." "I've also brought copies of some interesting emails between the two of you." I continued placing printouts next to the folder. Emails discussing how to manipulate me into paying for everything while keeping me in the dark about the total cost. Mom's face drained of color. "You went through my private emails. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you treat your daughter like an ATM machine? How dare you mock me and exclude me after taking nearly $60,000 from me?" Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. "Here we go again with the money. If you didn't want to help with the wedding, you should have said so from the beginning." I agreed to help with deposits. $5,000, not $60,000. "Well, things add up," Sarah sniffed. "It's not my fault you didn't budget properly." I stared at her, amazed by her audacity. "I want you both to listen carefully. I'm giving you one chance, just one, to make this right." "Make what right?" Mom asked warily. "I want a public acknowledgement of my financial contribution to this wedding. I want an apology for how you've treated me. And I want to be reinstated in the bridal party with no more comments about my appearance or what I choose to wear." Sarah laughed incredulously. "Are you seriously making demands about my wedding? After that scene you caused at the dress fitting?" "This isn't a negotiation, Sarah. Either you acknowledge what I've done and apologize for how you've treated me, or I'll cancel everything." Mom put her hand on my arm. "Honey, you're upset, I understand, but you can't cancel anything. All the arrangements are finalized." "Actually, I can. Every contract is in my name. Legally, I'm the client, not Sarah. I've already spoken with all the vendors. One call from me and the venue catering, flowers, music, photography, all of it disappears." Sarah's face contorted with rage. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." "You're just jealous," she spat. "You've always been jealous that I'm getting married before you, that I found someone who loves me while you're still alone. Is that really what you think this is about? Not the fact that you've taken advantage of me and treated me like garbage." "We've treated you like family," Mom interjected. "Family helps each other. Family makes sacrifices." "Where are your sacrifices, Mom? Where are Sarah's? I'm the only one sacrificing here." "I've put my entire life on hold planning this wedding," Mom protested. "And I've put my financial future on hold paying for it," I countered. Sarah stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "If you ruin my wedding, I will never speak to you again. Never. You'll be dead to me." I looked at her calmly. "That's your choice. But I won't be disrespected and exploited anymore, not even by family." "You selfish bitch," Sarah hissed. "After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Sarah? Name one thing." She faltered, unable to come up with a single example. That's what I thought. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "You should know that I've already canceled everything this morning. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, all of it. The deposits were non-refundable this close to the date, but I've received back about $30,000 so far." Their faces went from red with anger to pale with shock in an instant. "You," what Sarah whispered. "You heard me. There is no wedding. At least not the one you were planning. If you want to get married on Saturday, you'll need to find a new venue and vendors, and you'll need to pay for them yourselves." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "You can't do this. You can't." "I already have. Check your email if you don't believe me. The vendors have all sent cancellation confirmations." Sarah fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely navigate to her email. When she found the confirmation messages, she let out a wail that turned heads throughout the restaurant. "My wedding. You've destroyed my wedding. How could you do this? The same way you could kick me out of your bridal party after taking $60,000 from me. The same way you could call me trashy to my face and talk about me behind my back. The same way you could lie to Jackson and his family about who was paying for everything." Mom stood up now too, her face twisted with fury. "You'll fix this right now, Selena. Call the vendors back and tell them it was a mistake. No. What will we tell the Taylors? Sarah sobbed. What will we tell Jackson? I suggest you tell them the truth for once. That you expected me to bankroll your fantasy wedding while treating me like an embarrassing relative you had to tolerate. That your sense of entitlement finally met its match. Sarah lunged across the table, knocking over glasses and plates as she grabbed for me. I hate you. I'll never forgive you for this. I stepped back, quickly avoiding her grasp. That's your choice, but I forgive myself for finally standing up to both of you. Other diners were openly staring now as Sarah continued to scream threats and insults. A manager approached our table cautiously. Is everything all right here? No, I said, calmly gathering my purse and folder. But I was just leaving. I turned back to Sarah and Mom. The check for dinner is covered. Consider it my final contribution to this family. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could still hear Sarah's hysterical sobbing and Mom's attempts to quiet her. It should have felt terrible. In some ways it did. But mostly I felt a profound sense of relief, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in almost a year, I was taking control of my own life again, instead of sacrificing it for people who didn't appreciate me. In my car, I stopped the recording and sent a copy to my email for safekeeping. I didn't know if I would ever need it, but after months of gaslighting and manipulation, I wanted concrete proof of what had really happened. No more allowing them to rewrite history or twist my words. As I drove home, my phone exploded with texts and calls from Mom Sarah and eventually Jackson and his parents. I ignored them all. Whatever storm was coming, I was ready for it. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly free. The week that should have culminated in Sarah's wedding instead became a masterclass in family drama and personal growth. Word spread quickly through our extended family and social circles. Mom and Sarah crafted a narrative painting me as mentally unstable, claiming I'd had some kind of breakdown due to jealousy. Some relatives believed them. Others reached out to me directly curious about my side of the story. I didn't engage in the drama. I simply forwarded the full accounting of wedding expenses to anyone who asked, along with the email screenshots showing their true intentions. The facts spoke for themselves. 3 days after the restaurant confrontation, I received an unexpected visitor, Margaret Taylor Jackson's mother. She stood on my doorstep looking uncomfortable but determined. May I come in, Selena? I think we need to talk. I hesitated but ultimately invited her inside. We sat in my modest living room, the renovation plans still rolled up in the corner where I'd abandoned them months ago. Jackson told us what happened, she began. Or rather, what Sarah told him happened. That you'd promised to pay for the wedding and then vindictively pulled out at the last minute. I started to object, but Margaret held up her hand. I didn't believe it for a second. Something always felt off about the wedding arrangements. Your mother would take credit for everything while you sat quietly in the background. It never made sense. I didn't want to cause trouble, I admitted. And that's exactly what they counted on. Margaret's expression softened. I looked into the canceled contracts. I saw the numbers. No one spends $60,000 on a sister's wedding, especially not someone living in a home that clearly needs work. She gestured to my outdated kitchen visible through the doorway. I wanted Sarah to be happy. At your expense, literally and figuratively. Margaret sighed. I should tell you that Jackson has broken off the engagement. This genuinely surprised me, because of the canceled wedding. No, because of Sarah's reaction to it. When he realized the wedding had been funded entirely by you without acknowledgement, he confronted her. Her response was illuminating. She showed no remorse, only anger at being exposed. Jackson said he saw a side of her he couldn't unsee. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, vindication, but also sadness for what might have been. I'm sorry it ended this way. I'm not, Margaret said firmly. Better to discover someone's true character before marriage than after. And frankly, I'm grateful to you for the eye-opening experience. Our family values honesty and hard work. We would never have respected someone who treated their own sister the way Sarah treated you. After Margaret left, I used some of the refunded wedding money to finally start my kitchen renovation. The rest went back into my emergency fund and retirement accounts. I took that hiking trip to Yosemite I'd postponed, spending 2 weeks reconnecting with nature and myself. When I returned, there was a message from my estranged father who had left when Sarah was just 5 years old. Mom had always blamed his departure on work stress, painting him as a man who abandoned his family. We'd had minimal contact over the years at Mom's insistence. I heard what happened with the wedding, he said when I called him back. It brought back a lot of memories. What do you mean? Your mother did the same thing to me, Selena. Made financial demands that were never enough, took credit for my contributions, made me feel like I was never doing enough for the family. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. So you left. It wasn't an accusation, just an acknowledgement. I tried to stay in your lives, but your mother made it almost impossible. Every visitation became a negotiation about money. Every holiday a guilt trip. He paused. I should have fought harder to maintain my relationship with you girls. That's my biggest regret. That conversation opened the door to reconnecting with my father, who it turned out had remarried and built a healthy, balanced life with clear boundaries. Meeting his new family showed me what functional relationships could look like: people who appreciated each other and expressed gratitude rather than entitlement. Mom made several attempts at reconciliation over the following months, but each one quickly revealed itself as just another attempt to regain access to my financial support. Sarah's in therapy now, she told me during one phone call. But it's so expensive. If you could just help with the bills, it would show her you've forgiven her. I declined politely but firmly. I'm glad Sarah's getting help, but my wallet is closed. Family helps family, she insisted, falling back on her favorite guilt trip. Yes, they do, I agreed. But help goes both ways, and it comes with respect and appreciation, not manipulation and entitlement. She hung up on me, and our contact became increasingly sporadic. Sarah never apologized. According to mutual acquaintances, she'd created a revisionist history in which I'd sabotaged her wedding out of jealousy and mental instability. I let her have her story. Those who knew me understood the truth, and those who believed her weren't people I needed in my life anyway. A year after the wedding that never was, my kitchen renovation was complete. My savings were back on track, and I'd started dating a kind, honest man named James who appreciated my directness and strength. He knew my story and admired how I'd handled it. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, he told me one evening as we cooked dinner in my new kitchen. It's necessary. You can't truly be generous with others if you're allowing yourself to be depleted. I hosted a dinner party that night for my closest friends, including Amanda, who had stood by me through everything. As I looked around at the genuine affection and respect on display, I realized I had built something more valuable than any wedding could provide: authentic relationships based on mutual appreciation rather than obligation or exploitation. 6 months later, when James proposed, we planned a small, meaningful ceremony that reflected our values. We each contributed equally to the costs, which were modest but sufficient. I didn't invite Mom or Sarah. Instead, my father walked me down the aisle, and Amanda stood beside me as my maid of honor. There were no crystal chandeliers or imported flowers. No $20,000 dress or premium open bar. Just good food, heartfelt vows, and people who truly cared about our happiness, rather than the appearance of it. And it was perfect. Looking back now, I don't regret canceling Sarah's wedding. I regret not setting boundaries sooner. I regret allowing myself to be manipulated and exploited in the name of family obligation. But those regrets taught me the most valuable lesson of all: true family doesn't measure love in dollars and cents. True family lifts you up rather than draining you dry. So if you're reading this and recognizing your own situation in my story, please know that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and others is to say no to being taken advantage of. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.